October 24th, 2025, 9:34 p.m. 26-year-old Hannah Reeves steps into frame, unaware that the camera above her is capturing the last verified moments of her life. The footage seems ordinary at first. A quiet apartment hallway in downtown Columbus, Ohio. Hannah walks past, keys in hand, her posture relaxed, her pace unhurried. She pauses briefly near her door, glances down at her phone, and disappears inside. For investigators, for her family, and for millions who would later watch this clip, it appeared to be a closed moment. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. But that conclusion was wrong, because hidden in plain sight in the far left corner of that same footage, at exactly 2 minutes and 14 seconds, something moves. Something no one noticed. Not the detectives, not the forensic analysts, not even the media outlets that replayed this video over and over again. Everyone was watching Hannah. No one was watching what was watching her. And by the time someone finally did, the case had already taken a devastating turn. Tonight, you're going to see what they didn't. The hallway camera inside the building on East Long Street had recorded hundreds of quiet nights, just like this one. Residents coming and going, delivery drivers stepping in and out. Nothing that ever demanded a second look. It was a kind of footage that existed purely as a precaution, a silent witness no one expected to matter. But on October 24th, everything it captured would become the center of a case that refused to make sense. Hannah Reeves was not someone who lived recklessly. At 26, she had built a life defined by routine, structure, and careful choices. She worked as a pediatric occupational therapist at a clinic just 10 minutes from her apartment, a job she had chosen deliberately because it allowed her to stay close to her family while doing work that mattered to her. Her co-workers described her as precise, not rigid but thoughtful, the kind of person who double-checked schedules, who stayed late when a child needed extra time, who remembered details others forgot. Parents trusted her. Children responded to her. She had a way of making people feel safe without trying. Outside of work, her life followed a rhythm that rarely changed. Weekdays were predictable. She left her apartment at 7:40 every morning, always with coffee in a reusable cup, always with her hair pulled back the same way. She stopped at the same traffic light, parked in the same spot, and walked into the clinic within minutes of opening. Evenings were quieter. Most nights, she returned home before 9, sometimes earlier. She cooked simple meals, called her younger sister almost every night, and watched the same handful of shows she had already seen more than once. It wasn't a life built on spontaneity. It was built on consistency. And that consistency is what made what happened next so deeply unsettling. Because when someone like Hannah disappears, there is usually a break in pattern, a deviation, a risk, something that explains how things went wrong. But in Hannah's case, there was nothing. Her apartment building reflected the same sense of order. A mid-rise complex with controlled entry, clean hallways, and a management team that emphasized security. Residents needed a key fob to access the front door. Cameras monitored each floor. Maintenance requests were handled quickly. Complaints were rare. Hannah had chosen the building for those exact reasons. She had moved in 8 months earlier after carefully comparing options across the city. She avoided ground floor units, prioritized well-lit parking, and made sure there were cameras in common areas. Friends who helped her move remembered her joking that she might be overly cautious. But she didn't mind. "I just like knowing I'm safe," she had said. And for 8 months, that had been true. On the evening of October 24th, Hannah's day followed its usual structure. She finished her last appointment just after 6 p.m., stayed behind briefly to update patient notes, and left the clinic around 6:40. Her phone records show a call to her sister at 7:05, a conversation that lasted just under 12 minutes. They talked about nothing unusual, weekend plans, a co-worker's upcoming wedding, A recipe Hannah had tried the night before that didn't turn out the way she expected. There was laughter. There was no tension. At 7:42 p.m., she stopped at a grocery store less than a mile from her apartment. Surveillance from the store shows her walking the aisles alone, placing a few items into a basket: pasta, a jar of sauce, fresh spinach, and a small container of strawberries. She paid at a self-checkout lane, thanked the attendant when she needed help scanning an item, and left at 8:03. Again, nothing unusual. At 8:26 p.m., her car entered the parking garage of her apartment building. The entry camera shows her pulling into her usual spot on the second level. She sat in the car for a moment before stepping out, adjusting her bag, and locking the door behind her. That pause would later stand out to investigators, not because it suggested fear, but because it suggested normalcy. People pause when they're comfortable, when they're not rushing, when they feel safe. Hannah gathered her groceries, balanced them against her hip, and walked toward the elevator. The garage lighting was steady. The space was quiet. There was no one else visible in the frame. But this is where everything begins to shift. Because what Hannah didn't know, what no one knew at the time, is that the cameras capturing these moments were recording more than just her movements. They were capturing details that would not be noticed until much later. Details that did not fit into the clean, ordinary timeline everyone believed they were watching. At 8:29 p.m., she stepped into the elevator. The interior camera shows her pressing the button for the 4th floor, adjusting the strap of her bag, and briefly checking her phone again. She doesn't look up. She doesn't react to anything unusual. The elevator ride lasts just under 30 seconds. At 8:30 p.m., the doors open. The hallway outside is empty. The lighting is consistent. The carpet undisturbed. Doors closed. The kind of stillness that feels routine, not ominous. Hannah steps out, turns left, and begins walking toward her apartment at the end of the corridor. Her footsteps are steady, her posture unchanged. She shifts the grocery bag slightly, as if it's heavier than expected, and continues forward. For anyone watching later, this moment feels like a conclusion, a return home, a safe ending to an ordinary day. But it isn't, because what happened after she reached that door would fracture every assumption investigators made in the hours, days, and weeks that followed. And even more unsettling, the answers were already there, hidden in the footage, waiting in a place no one thought to look. At 8:30 p.m., the 4th floor hallway camera captures Hannah Reeves stepping out of the elevator and turning left toward her apartment. The timestamp is clear in the upper corner. 20 hours, 30 minutes, and 12 seconds. She walks at a steady pace, her keys already in her right hand, grocery bag balanced against her left side. The distance from the elevator to her unit is short, 12 seconds, maybe 15 at most. She reaches her door, shifts slightly to free her hand, and unlocks it without hesitation. At 20 hours, 30 minutes, and 26 seconds, she steps inside. The door closes behind her, and for the next several hours, nothing appears out of place. That absence of movement becomes the first anchor point in the investigation. Because at 11:47 p.m., Hannah's sister sends her a text message. It goes unread. At 12:32 a.m., another message. No response. By morning, concern begins to build. Hannah has never ignored calls, never missed a morning check-in. By 9:15 a.m. on October 25th, her sister contacts the apartment management to request a wellness check. At 9:42 a.m., building staff unlock Hannah's apartment door. What they find inside deepens the mystery rather than clarifying it. Her groceries are still on the kitchen counter, partially unpacked. The pasta and sauce are set aside neatly. The strawberries remain in their container, unopened. Her purse rests on the table. Her phone is there too, screen dark, no signs of forced shutdown. There is no indication of a struggle, no broken furniture, no overturned objects, no signs of forced entry. The apartment looks exactly like it should, except Hannah is gone. This is where the timeline becomes critical, because investigators immediately return to the surveillance footage, reconstructing her last known movements minute by minute. The garage camera shows no activity after she enters the building. The elevator footage confirms she rode alone. The hallway camera shows her entering her apartment at 20 hours, 30 minutes, and 26 seconds. And then nothing. No one exits. No one approaches her door. No unusual movement. At least, that's what everyone believes at first. Police initially focus on the most immediate possibilities: voluntary disappearance, medical emergency, a late-night departure that somehow went unnoticed. But each theory begins to collapse under scrutiny. Her phone never leaves the apartment. Her car remains parked in the garage. There are no rideshare records, no outgoing calls, no digital activity after 8:31 p.m. It is as if she simply ceased to exist inside that space. But this is where everything changes. Because as detectives continue reviewing the footage, they begin narrowing in on a different possibility. Someone else was involved. The working theory shifts toward an unknown individual gaining access to her apartment after she entered. Attention turns to the building itself. Who had access? Who lived on the 4th floor? Who might have been nearby at the time? Residents are interviewed. Maintenance logs are reviewed. Key fob data is analyzed. One name surfaces quickly: Daniel Carter, a 34-year-old resident who lived 2 doors down from Hannah. He had moved into the building just 3 months earlier, kept to himself, minimal interaction with neighbors. At first, there is nothing overtly suspicious about him. But then investigators notice something in the key fob records. At 8:28 p.m., just 1 minute before Hannah enters the elevator, Daniel's fob is used to access the building's rear entrance. At 8:31 p.m., approximately 1 minute after Hannah enters her apartment, his fob registers again, this time at the stairwell door leading to the 4th floor. It's close enough to raise concern. Detectives begin to reconstruct the possibility that Daniel used the stairs to reach the 4th floor at nearly the same time Hannah arrived. That he could have approached her apartment shortly after she entered. That he may have knocked, gained entry, and left without being captured on camera. Because notably, the hallway camera only covers a portion of the corridor. There are blind spots, and suddenly those blind spots become everything. Daniel is brought in for questioning. He appears calm, cooperative. He explains that he returned home that evening, used the stairs as he often did, and went directly to his apartment. He denies any interaction with Hannah, denies even knowing her beyond passing glimpses in the hallway. There is no physical evidence linking him to her apartment. No fingerprints out of place. No DNA. No signs he had ever been inside. But the timing remains difficult to ignore. Investigators begin to focus on him exclusively. Search warrants are issued. His apartment is examined. Nothing. His phone records show no unusual activity. No searches. No messages. No indication of planning or contact. Still, the proximity of his movements to Hannah's disappearance becomes the central narrative. And eventually, it is enough. Daniel Carter is arrested on suspicion of abduction. The case moves quickly from investigation to prosecution. The theory presented is simple. He saw Hannah enter her apartment, followed her moments later, gained access either by force or deception, and removed her from the apartment without leaving visible evidence. It's a theory built largely on timing, on proximity, on the assumption that no one else could have been there. The trial draws attention. The hallway footage is shown repeatedly. Hannah entering. The empty corridor afterward. The absence of any visible suspect. Prosecutors argue that the lack of footage proves intentional avoidance. That Daniel used knowledge of the building's layout to stay within blind spots. The defense counters that there is no direct evidence, no witness, no forensic link, no clear sequence of events placing him inside her apartment. But the timeline remains persuasive, and in the absence of an alternative explanation, the jury makes its decision. Daniel Carter is convicted, sentenced to 25 years. For many, the case appears resolved. A quiet crime committed by someone hiding in plain sight. A tragedy explained by opportunity and timing. But even then, there are questions. Small ones at first. Details that don't quite align. Why there were no signs of forced entry. Why Hannah's phone remained untouched. Why no one in any footage ever appeared near her door after she entered. And most importantly, why the cameras, designed to capture everything, seemed to show so little. Because what no one realized at the time is that they had been watching the footage incorrectly from the very beginning, and the truth had been there all along. For nearly 11 months, the case of Hannah Reeves sat in a place that felt, to most people, like closure. A conviction had been secured. A narrative had been accepted. The timeline, while imperfect, had been deemed sufficient. Daniel Carter was in prison, and the system had moved forward. But not everyone believed the story was complete. Among those who continued to question it was Elena Vasquez, a digital forensic analyst who had not been involved in the original investigation. She first encountered the case the way millions of others did, through a clipped version of the hallway footage circulating online. At first glance, she saw what everyone else saw: a woman returning home, an empty corridor, a disappearance that made no sense. But Elena's work had trained her to look differently, not just at what was happening in the center of a frame, but at what existed around it, the edges. The areas most people ignore, because in her experience, critical details rarely announce themselves. They hide, and this is where everything changes. Elena obtained the full, uncompressed footage from the building's security system, not the edited clips used in court, not the cropped versions replayed in media coverage. The original file, with its full resolution intact. She began where everyone else had, watching Hannah step out of the elevator at 20 hours, 30 minutes, and 12 seconds, walking the hallway, unlocking her door, entering at 20 hours, 30 minutes, and 26 seconds. Then she let the footage continue. 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, nothing. The hallway remains still. At exactly 2 minutes and 14 seconds after Hannah enters her apartment, the timestamp reads 20 hours, 32 minutes, and 40 seconds. And in the far left corner of the frame, something shifts. It's subtle. So subtle that at normal playback speed, it looks like compression noise, a flicker, a distortion. But Elena slows the footage down, frame by frame, and what emerges is not a glitch. It's movement, a shadow crossing behind the narrow vertical edge of the camera's field of view. Not in the main hallway, but just beyond it, in a section partially obscured by the wall near the stairwell entrance. A place most viewers never focused on, because everyone was watching Hannah's door. No one was watching the corner. Elena isolates the frames, enhances the contrast, stabilizes the image, and gradually, a shape becomes clearer, a figure, standing just outside the visible corridor, still, waiting. For nearly 2 full minutes after Hannah enters her apartment, this figure does not move into view, does not approach her door, does not trigger any obvious alarm. It simply remains there, positioned precisely within the blind edge of the camera. And then, at 20 hours, 32 minutes, and 43 seconds, it moves. Not toward Hannah's door, but away from it, slipping backward, deeper into the area leading toward the stairwell, disappearing completely. This single detail rewrites everything, because it introduces a presence no one accounted for. Someone who was already on the 4th floor before Hannah arrived. Someone who understood exactly where the camera could and could not see. And more importantly, someone who never needed to cross the visible hallway at all. Elena brings her findings to independent investigators, who begin cross-referencing the building's layout with the footage. What they uncover is a structural detail that had been overlooked. Adjacent to the stairwell entrance is a maintenance access door. It blends into the wall, painted the same color, rarely used except by building staff. It does not require a key fob when opened from the inside. And crucially, it opens into a narrow service corridor that runs parallel to the main hallway. A corridor with no camera coverage. From that service corridor, there is a secondary access point. One that connects directly to a small utility panel located just feet from Hannah's apartment door. Hidden from the camera's view, hidden from everyone. But this is where everything changes again. Because when investigators revisit the building's maintenance logs, they find something that had been dismissed early on. An entry from October 24th, 8:12 p.m., a routine inspection logged by a contracted technician. Name, Marcus Hale. At the time, it meant nothing. A standard check. A name among many. But now with the new footage, it becomes critical. Because Marcus Hale had authorized access to every service corridor in the building that night. He had reason to be there, and he had knowledge of spaces no resident would understand. When authorities locate and question him, his initial statements mirror the simplicity of the original narrative. He claims he completed his inspection and left before 8:30 p.m. He denies any interaction with residents, denies being on the 4th floor at the time Hannah returned. But this is where the evidence begins to close in. Vehicle logs place his work van still in the garage at 8:35 p.m., long after he claimed to have left. Further analysis of the footage reveals something else. At 20 hours, 28 minutes and 54 seconds, just seconds before Hannah enters the building, a faint reflection appears on a metallic panel near the edge of the frame. A reflection that captures movement not directly visible. A silhouette passing through the service corridor. Timing that aligns perfectly with someone positioning themselves before Hannah arrived. Under renewed investigation, the sequence becomes clear. Marcus Hale did not leave at 8:12. He remained inside, used the service corridor to access the 4th floor undetected, positioned himself within the blind edge of the camera, waited, and after Hannah entered her apartment, he approached through the concealed access point near her door, a route that never required him to cross the visible hallway, a route no one had considered. This is why there were no signs of forced entry visible from the corridor, why no one appeared on camera, why the timeline never made sense. Because the crime did not occur where everyone was looking. It happened just outside of it. Faced with the new evidence, Marcus Hale's account begins to fracture. Inconsistencies emerge. Timelines shift. And eventually, under sustained questioning, he confesses to entering Hannah's apartment through the concealed access area, exploiting a maintenance design flaw he knew existed. The case against Daniel Carter collapses. His conviction is overturned. After nearly a year in prison, he is released. A man who had been placed at the center of a story built on incomplete vision. Marcus Hale is charged, tried, and ultimately convicted. And for Hannah's family, the truth brings a different kind of closure. not relief, but clarity. Because for months, the answer had been there, embedded in the footage, visible but not seen. A reminder of how easily perception can be guided, how quickly assumptions can take hold, and how a single overlooked detail can alter the course of justice. So if you go back now and watch that footage again, don't look at Hannah. Look at the left corner, at exactly 2:14. Because sometimes the truth isn't hidden. It's just waiting for someone to notice it.